The ship came out of faster-than-light travel with a soft hum. Captain Yuna stood near the front window of her vessel, watching as the massive space station appeared before her eyes. Station Orion was the largest structure she had ever seen. It floated in the darkness of space like a small moon made of metal and glass. Lights covered every part of it, blinking in patterns that seemed almost alive. "We have arrived, Captain," said Lieutenant Taiho from behind her. He was a tall man with a calm face and steady hands. He had served with Yuna for 7 years now. In that time, he had learned to read her moods better than anyone else. Yuna did not answer right away. She kept her eyes on the station. Thousands of ships surrounded it. Some were small, like her own vessel. Others were so large that they could hold entire cities inside them. Ships from 100 different worlds had gathered here for the Galactic Summit. It was the most important meeting in the known universe. "First time seeing it?" Taiho asked, stepping up beside her. "Yes," Yuna said. Her voice was quiet but strong. "I always thought the reports were exaggerated." They were not. Taiho smiled a little. "The aliens do like to build big things." Yuna finally turned away from the window. She was not a tall woman. She stood only a bit over 5 feet. But there was something in her presence that made people pay attention. Maybe it was the way she held herself, straight and proud. Maybe it was the look in her eyes, dark and deep, like she had seen things that most people could not imagine. Or maybe it was the armor she wore. The chainmail covered her from neck to waist. It was made of thousands of tiny metal rings, each one linked to the others. The metal was dark gray, almost black in some places. It was old, very old. The design came from ancient Earth, from a time when humans still fought with swords and arrows. But this mail was different. It had been improved with modern technology. The rings were made from a special alloy that could stop most energy weapons. It was light enough to wear all day, but strong enough to save a life. "The delegation shuttle is ready," Taiho said. "The others are waiting." Yuna nodded. She walked past him toward the door, her mail making soft sounds with each step. Taiho followed her, as he always did. The shuttle bay was busy with activity. 20 soldiers stood in formation, all wearing the dark blue uniforms of Earth's 7th Fleet. They were the best soldiers humanity had to offer. Each one had been chosen for this mission because of their skill and their loyalty. They snapped to attention as Yuna entered. "At ease," she said. She walked along the line, looking at each face. These men and women had followed her into battle many times. Some of them had scars of their own. All of them had stories. A young woman named Hana stepped forward. She was the communications officer for this mission. "Captain, the station has given us permission to dock." "They are?" "Surprised that we brought so many soldiers." "Are they worried?" Yuna asked. Hana hesitated. "I think they are confused. Most delegations bring only a few people. We are the first to bring 20 armed soldiers." "Let them be confused," Yuna said. "We are here to represent Earth. We will do it our way." The shuttle ride to the station took only 15 minutes, but it felt longer. Yuna sat in silence, thinking about the days ahead. The Galactic Summit happened only once every 50 years. Leaders from every major species came together to discuss peace, trade, and the future of the galaxy. Humanity had been invited for the first time. It was a great honor, but also a great test. Humans were still new to the galactic community. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 80 years ago. In that time, they had spread across dozens of star systems. They had fought wars, made allies, and earned a reputation. But most alien species still saw them as children, young, weak, primitive. Yuna knew this. She had heard in whispers. She had read the reports. The aliens respected human courage, but they laughed at human technology. They thought human ships were ugly. They thought human weapons were crude. And they thought human customs were strange. The shuttle docked with a gentle bump. The doors opened and bright light flooded in. Una stood and walked forward. Her soldiers followed in perfect formation. The docking bay of Station Orion was enormous. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Trees and plants from 100 worlds grew in carefully arranged gardens. Fountains sprayed water that sparkled like diamonds. And everywhere, aliens moved about their business. Una had seen aliens before, of course, but never so many in one place. They were tall, thin creatures with blue skin and 4 arms. They were short, round beings covered in fur. There were things that looked like insects, things that looked like fish, and things that looked like nothing she had ever imagined. The variety was overwhelming. A group of officials approached. They were Valori, one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. The Valori looked almost human, but their skin was pale purple, and their eyes were solid gold. They wore flowing robes of white silk. The leader of the group stepped forward. He was taller than the others, with a proud face and a cold expression. "I am Ambassador Keth," he said. His voice was smooth and deep. "Welcome to Station Orion, humans." Una bowed her head slightly. "I am Captain Una, representing Earth and its colonies. Thank you for your welcome." Keth's golden eyes moved over her slowly. They stopped on her chainmail. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then his lips curved into a small smile that was not friendly at all. "Interesting armor," he said. "I have seen such things in museums. I did not know humans still wore them." Some of the other Valori laughed softly. The sound was quiet, but Una heard it clearly. She felt Taiho tense beside her. "It serves its purpose," Una said calmly. "I am sure it does," Keth replied. His tone made it clear that he did not believe her. "Come, the other delegates are waiting. Try not to embarrass yourselves." He turned and walked away. The other Valori followed, still smiling their cold smiles. Una stood still for a moment, watching them go. "Captain," Taiho said quietly. "Should I?" "No," Una said. "We expected this. We prepared for this. Let them laugh. They will learn." She started walking, her mail singing its soft song with every step. Her soldiers followed, their faces hard and proud. They were humans. They had come to prove themselves. And nothing, not laughter, not scorn, not the contempt of ancient species, would make them turn back. The Galactic Summit was about to begin. And Captain Una was ready. The silence continued for several heartbeats after Una sat down. Then Lieutenant Taiho stepped forward. He had not planned to speak. This was supposed to be Captain Una's moment. But the faces around the room told him that more needed to be said. The aliens were shocked, yes, but they did not truly understand what they had seen. "Permission to address the assembly, Captain," he said quietly. Una looked at him for a moment. Then she nodded. Taiho turned to face the gathered delegates. His heart was beating fast, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "My name is Lieutenant Taiho. I have served under Captain Una for 7 years. In that time, I have watched her do things that I still cannot explain. Things that should be impossible. I would like to tell you about humans, if you will listen." No one objected. No one even moved. "You see our scars and you are surprised," Taiho continued. "But what you must understand is that scars are common among humans. We are a species that survives. It is our greatest talent, perhaps our only talent, compared to the wonders of the galaxy." He began to walk slowly around the edge of the table, making eye contact with various delegates as he passed. "We are not the strongest species. The Korath could break any human in half without effort. We are not the smartest species. The Nelith have been studying the universe for millennia before we discovered fire. We are not the oldest, or the fastest, or the most advanced. By every measure that matters, we should be nothing. A small young species on the edge of known space. They stopped walking and turned to face the center of the room. But we survive. We survive things that should kill us. We heal from wounds that should end us. We get up when we should stay down. This is what it means to be human. Commander Grath of the Korath spoke up. The scars tell a story, Lieutenant. But how do we know this story is true? How do we know your captain is not simply unlucky, or foolish, or both? Taiho smiled slightly. A fair question, Commander. Let me tell you about the Battle of Nexus Station, since you know of it. He clasped his hands behind his back. Captain Yuna was a young officer then, only 24 years old. She was in charge of a supply ship that happened to be at the station when your forces attacked. When the main fleet retreated, she was trapped with 62 soldiers and 300 civilians. The Korath delegates leaned forward with interest. For 2 weeks, she held a section of the station against repeated attacks. She had no heavy weapons, no reinforcements, no hope of rescue, but she would not surrender. Every time your warriors broke through, she pushed them back. Every time they found a new route, she blocked it. Taiho's voice grew quieter, but somehow stronger. On the 15th day, she received word that rescue ships were coming, but they could only dock at one location, on the far side of the station. Between her position and the dock was 3 kilometers of enemy-held territory. 3 kilometers of your best warriors. They looked at Grath directly. She led the evacuation personally. She put the civilians in the middle, the soldiers on the outside, and herself at the very front. For 8 hours, they moved through the station. Every corner was a battle. Every corridor was a trap. Your warriors were everywhere. By the time they reached the dock, only 7 soldiers were still standing. All 300 civilians made it. Captain Yuna was the last one through the airlock. She was carried onto the rescue ship because she could no longer walk. The doctors counted 37 separate wounds on her body. Any one of them should have killed her. The room was completely silent. She spent 4 months recovering. The doctors said she would never walk again. She proved them wrong in 3 weeks. They said she would never hold a weapon again. She was back on duty in 6 months. They said the psychological damage would end her career. She was promoted to captain within a year. Taiho looked around the room slowly. This is not unusual for humans. We have thousands of soldiers with stories like this. Men and women who have been broken, burned, crushed, and cut, who have gotten back up and continued to fight. It is simply what we do. One of the Nelith floated forward in their tank. Their voice came through a translator device, soft and musical. We have studied your species with great interest, the Nelith said. Your biology is strange to us. You heal faster than you should. You tolerate pain better than your nervous system should allow. You continue functioning with injuries that would kill most species. We do not understand how. Taiho nodded. We do not fully understand it either. Our scientists have theories. They speak of evolution, of survival pressure, of the harsh world that shaped us. But the truth is simpler than science. He paused. Humans are stubborn. We refuse to die, not because we do not fear death, but because we have things worth living for, people worth protecting, a future worth fighting for. When a human decides that something matters, truly matters, they will not stop until it is achieved, even if their body breaks, even if their mind screams for rest, even if every logical calculation says they should quit. He looked at Captain Yuna, who sat quietly in her chair, listening. The scars you saw on Captain Yuna's body are not marks of weakness. They are marks of victory. Each one represents a moment when death reached for her and she said no. Each one is proof that she has already given more than most beings will ever give. Commander Grath stood slowly. The massive Karth warrior walked around the table toward the human delegation. Other delegates moved aside nervously, but Yuna did not move. She watched him approach with calm eyes. Grath stopped in front of her. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. "Among my people," he said finally, "we have a word for warriors like you. We call them Vethkana. It means those who refuse the dark. It is our highest honor. It is given only to warriors who have faced death so many times that death no longer wants them." He placed his massive fist over his heart again. "I name you Vethkana, Captain Yuna of Earth. I speak for all Karth when I say this. You have earned our respect." Yuna stood and bowed deeply. "I am honored, Commander Grath, truly honored." Grath returned the bow, then walked back to his seat. But the effect of his words spread through the room like ripples in water. Other delegates were whispering to each other. The looks on their faces had changed. The amusement was gone. The contempt was gone. Something new had taken their place. Respect. Teho returned to his position behind Captain Yuna's chair. His job was done. He had said what needed to be said. Now the rest was up to her. But he knew that things had changed. The galaxy had seen something today that it would not forget. It had seen a human refuse to hide her scars. It had seen proof that humanity was not weak, not primitive, not foolish. Humanity was simply different. And different, as the delegates were beginning to realize, was not always a bad thing. The summit would continue. There would be negotiations and arguments and all the usual political games. But something fundamental had shifted. The humans were no longer strangers to be laughed at. They were Vethkana. They were survivors. And that changed everything. The main hall of the summit was built to impress. Giant pillars rose from the floor like the trunks of ancient trees. The ceiling was made of glass, showing the stars beyond. In the center of the room, a huge round table waited. It had seats for 50 delegations, each seat marked with the symbol of a different world. Yun found the human section easily. It was small, placed near the edge of the table, far from the center where the most important species sat. She did not complain. She sat down in her chair and folded her hands on the table. Taiho stood behind her, along with 4 of her best soldiers. The rest waited outside. The other delegates were already arriving. Yuna watched them carefully, studying each species as they took their places. She recognized some from her training. The Valori, of course, sat at the very center. They believed they were the oldest and wisest species in the galaxy. Maybe they were right. They had built empires when humans still lived in caves. Near the Valori sat the Korth, massive creatures covered in thick scales. They were warriors, famous for their strength and their honor. They looked at the humans with curiosity, but no hostility. The Nelith were there too, floating in special tanks filled with water. They looked like beautiful jellyfish, their bodies glowing with soft light. They were scientists and philosophers, known for their peaceful ways, and there were dozens of others. Some Yuna knew, some she did not. All of them looked at the human delegation with various expressions: curiosity, confusion, amusement, contempt. Ambassador Keth stood at the center of the table. He raised his hands, and the room fell silent. "Welcome, honored delegates," he said. His voice filled the hall without effort. "We gather here, as our ancestors gathered, to speak of peace and progress. Let us put aside our differences. Let us work together for the good of all." The words were pretty, but Yuna heard the emptiness in them. This was ceremony, nothing more. The real business would happen later, in private rooms and quiet corners. Keth continued speaking for some time. He talked about the history of the summit, about the great achievements of the past, about the challenges of the future. Yuna listened with half her attention. The other half she used to watch the room. She noticed that several delegates kept looking at her, or rather at her armor. The chainmail caught the light in interesting ways. It was clearly different from anything else in the room. Most species wore flowing robes or simple cloth. Some wore high-technology suits with glowing parts. But no one else wore metal rings linked together by hand. Finally, Keth finished his opening speech. He looked around the room with his golden eyes, and then his gaze stopped on Yuna. "Before we continue," he said, "there is a matter of protocol we must address." Yuna felt something cold touch her heart. She kept her face calm. "It is tradition," Keth continued, "for all delegates to remove their armor and weapons before the formal sessions begin. This shows trust. This shows that we come in peace. This tradition is as old as the summit itself." He smiled that cold smile again. "I notice that our human friends have not followed this tradition. Perhaps they do not know our ways. I would ask Captain Yuna to remove her armor now, so that we may proceed." The room was very quiet. Yuna could feel every eye on her. She could feel the weight of their stares like physical pressure. Taiho leaned down and whispered in her ear, "Captain, this could be a trap. If you remove your armor—" "I know," Yuna whispered back. She stood slowly. The sound of her chair moving seemed very loud in the silence. "Ambassador Keth," she said. Her voice was steady. "I thank you for explaining your traditions. However, I must respectfully decline." A murmur ran through the room. Several delegates looked shocked. Others looked angry. The Korath leader leaned forward with interest, his yellow eyes bright. Keth's smile did not change, but his eyes grew colder. "Perhaps you do not understand. This is not a request. It is a requirement. All delegates must remove their armor. There are no exceptions." "With respect," Yuna said, "I am the representative of Earth. I wear this armor as part of my duty. I will not remove it." "Then you cannot participate in the summit," Keth said. His voice was still smooth, but there was iron underneath. "These are the rules. They apply to everyone, even to newcomers." Laughter rippled through some parts of the room. Not all of the delegates joined in, but enough did. Yuna heard it and felt her jaw tighten. "You asked me to trust you," she said. "But trust must be earned, not demanded." "We've been holding these summits for 10,000 years, Keth replied. "We do not need to earn the trust of a species that discovered space travel less than a century ago. You are guests here. Guests follow the rules of their hosts." More laughter. Louder this time. Some of the delegates were not even trying to hide their amusement anymore. Yuna looked around the room slowly. She saw the smiling faces. She saw the contempt. She saw what they really thought of humans. Primitive, simple, foolish, creatures who did not know their place. "Tell me, Ambassador," she said quietly, "why is this tradition so important? What purpose does it serve?" Keth spread his hands. "It is simple. When we remove our armor, we show that we have nothing to hide. We show that we are honest. We show that we come to these talks with open hearts and clean intentions." "Nothing to hide," Yuna repeated. "And if someone has something they do not wish to show? What then?" "Then perhaps they should not be at this summit," Keth said. The threat was clear in his voice. "We have no place for those who keep secrets. We have no place for those who do not trust their fellow species." Yuna was quiet for a long moment. The room waited. Teho watched his captain with worried eyes. He had served with her for 7 years. He had seen her face down enemies that would make most people run screaming. He had seen her make impossible decisions without hesitation. But this was different. This was politics. And politics could be more dangerous than any battle. Finally, Yuna spoke. "Very well, Ambassador. If that is your tradition, I will honor it." Keth looked surprised for just a moment. Then his smile returned, wider than before. A wise decision, Captain. You see, humans can learn. But first, Yuna continued, I want everyone in this room to understand something. When I remove this armor, you will see things. Things that I do not show to many people. Things that tell a story. I want you to look carefully. I want you to understand. The room was very quiet now. Even the laughter had stopped. There was something in Yuna's voice that demanded attention. Keth waved his hand impatiently. Yes, yes. We will look. Now please, proceed. We have much business to discuss. Yuna nodded. She reached up to the clasp at her throat. Her fingers found the familiar metal. She had worn this armor for 15 years. It had become part of her, like a second skin. Removing it felt strange, wrong, but she had made her choice. Now she would show them all. Her hands began to move. The clasp came undone with a soft click. The sound was small, but in the silent room, it seemed very loud. Yuna's fingers moved to the second clasp, then the third. Each one opened easily. She had done this countless times before, usually alone in her quarters, usually with no one watching. Now she had an audience of thousands. The chainmail began to loosen around her shoulders. She could feel it shifting, the tiny rings moving against each other. It was a familiar sensation, almost comforting. But what came next would not be comfortable at all. Tejo stepped forward. Without a word, he helped her lift the mail over her head. It came off slowly, revealing the simple black shirt she wore underneath. The shirt had short sleeves. It was thin, and it hid nothing. The room gasped. Yuna stood still, her arms at her sides, letting them look. She knew what they were seeing. She had lived with it for years. But seeing their faces, watching their expressions change, was something new. Her arms were covered in scars. Not small scars. Not faint marks that could be ignored. These were thick, raised lines of damaged tissue that crossed over each other like a terrible map. Some were white with age. Some were still pink. A few looked almost fresh, though they were years old. Burns covered her left forearm. The skin there was rough and uneven, like melted wax that had hardened in strange shapes. Claw marks ran down her right arm, 4 parallel lines that went from shoulder to elbow. A perfect circle marked her wrist, the kind of scar that comes from being bound too tightly for too long. And that was just her arms. Through the thin shirt, they could see more. Her shoulders had deep marks that looked like bite wounds. Her collarbone showed a thick ridge where the bone had been broken and healed. Around her neck, a thin line ran all the way around, barely visible but impossible to miss once you noticed it. Keth's smile had disappeared. His golden eyes were wide. For the first time since Yuna had arrived, he looked truly surprised. What? He started to say, then stopped. Yuna turned slowly. She wanted everyone to see. When her back was to Keth, she heard more gasps. She knew what they were looking at. The scars on her back were worse than anywhere else. Whip marks crossed over each other in a pattern of pain. Burned scars formed strange shapes where hot metal had touched skin. One large scar ran from her left shoulder to her right hip, the memory of a blade that had nearly cut her in half. She completed her turn and faced Keth again. Her face was calm. Her eyes were steady. You wanted to see, she said. Now you see. The silence stretched on. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the Nelith had stopped their constant gentle movement and floated perfectly still in their tanks. Finally, one of the Korath stood. He was the largest one at their table, with scales of deep green and eyes like burning coals. His voice was deep and rough when he spoke. Those marks, he said slowly. Some of them were made by Korath claws. It was not a question. Yuna nodded. Yes, I fought in the Border Wars, the Battle of Nexus Station. The Korath stared at her. That battle killed 3,000 Korath warriors. It was one of our greatest defeats. We were told no humans survived. 7 of us survived, Yuna said. I was the only officer. I led us out through the maintenance tunnels. It took 3 days. We were hunted the whole time. She pointed to the claw marks on her arm. Your warriors caught us on the 2nd day. I held them off while my people escaped through a narrow passage. By the time I got through myself, I had these to remember the fight. The Korath was quiet for a moment. Then he did something that made everyone in the room stare. He placed his right fist over his heart and bowed his head. I am Commander Grath, he said. I honor your scars, human. They were earned with blood and courage. Yuna bowed her head in return. I honor your warriors. They fought well. Kath found his voice again. This is unexpected. He was trying to regain control of the situation, but his voice had lost its smooth confidence. But surely, Captain, these scars are from long ago. They do not. These, Yuna said, pointing to the burns on her forearm, came from the plague ship incident. 8 years ago. A disease ship was heading toward the Valori colony on Acheron. We boarded it to stop the engines. She saw Kath's face change slightly. The Valori knew about the plague ship. It was one of the few times humans had helped them directly. The ship's cooling system was damaged, Yuna continued. The engine room was filled with plasma fire. We had to work in temperatures that should have killed us. We saved the colony, but everyone on my team was burned. 2 of my people died from their injuries. I was the lucky one. She moved on to her wrist. This came from the prisoner exchange on Moth 4. I was captured while protecting diplomats from a radical group. They held me for 16 days before rescue came. She touched her neck. This was a gift from an assassin on Earth. He was trying to kill the president. I stepped in front of his wire at the last moment. The doctor said I should have died. I did die, actually. My heart stopped for 4 minutes before they brought me back. Point by point, she went through her scars. Each one had a story. Each one marked a moment when she should have died, but did not. The plasma wound from the Mayan colony defense. The shrapnel scars from the bombing on Luna Base. The strange, twisted mark on her shoulder from an alien weapon that no one had ever seen before. 43 times, she said finally. 43 times I should have died. By rights, I should not be standing here. By every calculation, by every prediction, by every medical probability, I should be dead. She paused and looked around the room. But I am not dead. I am here, and I wear my armor not because I am ashamed of what is underneath. I wear it because I have earned the right to cover these marks. Because I have given everything for my people. Because each of these scars represents a moment when I chose to stand between danger and those I was sworn to protect. The room was completely silent. Even the background hum of the station system seemed to have faded. Yuna picked up her chainmail from where Taiho had placed it on the table. She held it in her hands, feeling its familiar weight. This armor was given to me after the Nexus Station battle, she said. It was made by a master craftsman who spent 3 years on it. Every ring was formed by hand. Every link was blessed by the families of the soldiers who died under my command. It is not just armor. It is memory. It is honor. It is a promise that I will never forget those I have lost. She looked at Kath. You asked me to remove it to show trust. But Ambassador, trust is not shown by what we take off. Trust is shown by what we have survived together. She began putting the armor back on, one clasp at a time. Now you have seen what I hide. Now you know why I wear what I wear. The question is not whether I trust you. The question is whether you can earn the trust of someone who's already given everything for her people. The last clasp closed with a soft click. Yuna sat back down in her chair. "I believe we have business to discuss," she said calmly. "Shall we continue?" Ambassador Keth had not spoken since Yuna revealed her scars. He stood at the center of the great table, his golden eyes unreadable. The other Velori delegates whispered among themselves, but Keth remained silent, thinking, calculating. Finally, he raised his hand. The whispers stopped. "Captain Yuna," he said. His voice had lost its smooth, superior tone. Now it was simply careful. "I must admit, you have surprised me. In 10,000 years of summits, I have seen many things, but I have never seen anything quite like what you have shown us today." Yuna inclined her head slightly. "I did not come here to surprise anyone, Ambassador. I came here to represent my people." "And you have done so," Keth said, "more effectively than I expected." He stepped around the table, walking toward the human delegation. His movements were slow and deliberate. When he reached Yuna's chair, he stopped. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the empty space beside her. Yuna nodded. Keth sat down, his white robes pooling around him. This close, Yuna could see the fine lines around his eyes. The Velori lived for thousands of years, but even they showed age eventually. "I owe you an apology," Keth said quietly. His voice was pitched so that only Yuna and Taiho could hear. "I thought you were weak. I thought your species was weak. I believed what I had been told, and I did not look deeper." "What were you told?" Yuna asked. "That humans were children playing at being adults. That you had discovered space travel by accident and had no understanding of what it meant. That you were aggressive, primitive, and destined to destroy yourselves within a few generations." Yuna smiled slightly. "Many of our own people believe the same thing." Keth looked at her with something that might have been respect. "But you do not." "No," Yuna said. "I believe we are young and we make mistakes. I believe we have much to learn. But I also believe that we have earned our place among the stars. Not through technology or power, but through sheer refusal to give up." Keth was quiet for a moment. Then he did something that made every Velori in the room gasp. He bowed his head to Yuna, a deep bow. A bow of equals. "Captain Yuna," he said formally, "on behalf of the Velori people, I apologize for my words and my actions. You have shown me that wisdom does not always come with age. Sometimes it is earned through fire and blood and sacrifice." He stood and raised his voice so the entire room could hear. "I declare that the tradition of removing armor is suspended for this summit. Captain Yuna has demonstrated that there are truths more important than tradition. Let her example remind us all that we should not judge others by our own standards." The room erupted in murmurs. Some delegates looked pleased. Others looked confused. A few of the oldest species looked almost angry. But no one challenged Keth's decision. The summit continued for the next 3 days. The delegates discussed trade agreements and border disputes and all the complicated business of running a galaxy. Yuna participated in every session. She spoke rarely, but when she did, people listened. Her words carried weight now. Her presence commanded attention. But more interesting than the official meetings were the unofficial ones. On the second day, a delegation from the Nelith approached her during a break. They were scientists, they explained, and they had studied human biology for decades. Would Captain Yuna allow them to examine her scars more closely? They believed humans had natural healing abilities that could benefit many species. Yuna agreed. She spent 2 hours with the Nelith researchers, answering their questions and letting them scan her old wounds. When they finished, the lead researcher thanked her with what seemed like genuine emotion. "You have given us valuable data," the researcher said. "But more importantly, you have given us hope." We believed that fragile species could not survive in a dangerous universe. You have proven us wrong. On the third day, Commander Grath invited Yuna to join the Korath for a traditional warrior's meal. It was a great honor, he explained. The Korath did not share their food with outsiders lightly. The meal was challenging. Korath food was meant for beings with much stronger stomachs than humans. But Yuna ate everything she was given without complaint. By the end of the evening, she had made friends with half the Korath delegation. You would have made a fine Korath, Grath told her. In another life, perhaps? In another life, Yuna agreed. But I'm happy to be human. On the fourth day, something unexpected happened. Yuna was returning to her quarters when she found a young Valori waiting outside her door. The young alien looked nervous. Her purple skin was pale, and her golden eyes kept darting around the corridor. "Captain Yuna?" she asked. "May I speak with you?" Yuna studied the young Valori. She could not have been more than 50 years old, a child by Valori standards. "Of course," Yuna said. "Come inside." In the privacy of her quarters, the young Valori introduced herself as Myra. She was a student, she explained. She had come to the summit to learn about diplomacy. But what she had learned instead was something completely different. "I have been studying humans since I was young," Myra said. "My teachers always told me you were primitive and violent. They said you would never amount to anything. But when I saw your scars, when I heard your story, I realized they were wrong." She leaned forward with intensity. "I want to understand humans better. I want to learn from you. Would you allow me to visit Earth someday? To study at one of your schools?" Yuna was surprised, but she hid it well. "You would be welcome on Earth. We have much to learn from each other." Myra's face lit up with joy. It was the same expression Yuna had seen on young human faces 1,000 times before. Some things, it seemed, were universal. The summit ended on the 5th day. The delegates prepared to return to their home worlds. Trade agreements had been signed. Border disputes had been settled. But the most important change had nothing to do with politics or economics. The galaxy had discovered something new about humans. As Yuna and her delegation walked back to their shuttle, they passed through the same docking bay where they had arrived. The same aliens moved about their business. The same fountains sparkled with light. But the looks they received were different now. Before, the aliens had stared at them with curiosity and contempt. Now, they stared with something closer to wonder. Some even bowed slightly as the humans passed. A few touched their fists to their hearts in the Korath salute. Taiho walked beside Yuna, watching this transformation with quiet amazement. "Captain," he said, "I think we did something important here." Yuna nodded. "We showed them who we are. Do you think it will last? Will they remember?" Yuna stopped walking. She looked out at the endless stars through the transparent walls of the docking bay. "They will remember," she said. "Not because of anything I said or did, but because humans will keep showing up. We will keep fighting. We will keep surviving. We will keep earning our place, one scar at a time." She touched her armor, feeling the familiar weight of the chainmail. "That is what it means to be human, Taiho. We do not ask for respect. We do not demand recognition. We simply refuse to give up. And eventually, the universe has no choice but to notice." The shuttle was waiting. The doors opened. Yuna stepped aboard, followed by her soldiers. Behind them, Station Orion continued its endless orbit through the stars. The galactic summit was over. But something new had begun. In the great hall where the meetings had been held, Ambassador Keth stood alone. He was looking at the seat where Captain Yuna had sat, the seat where she had shown the galaxy her scars. For a long time, he simply stood there, thinking. Then, slowly, he smiled. It was not the cold smile he had worn before. It was something softer, something almost like admiration. Humans, he said to the empty room. They really are something else. He turned and walked away, his white robes trailing behind him. The lights dimmed. The great hall fell silent, but the story of Captain Yuna and her scars had only just begun. It would spread across the galaxy in the weeks and months to come. It would be told in schools and military academies. It would become a legend, and whenever someone asked why humans were respected among the stars, the answer would always be the same. Because they refused to hide their scars. Because they earned the right to cover them. Because they survived. Because that was what humans did.